are some tiny details in the Diablo 4 gameplay trailer for the Druid you may have missed. Back in November during BlizzCon 2019, we witnessed many videos showcasing the then current builds of each of the 3 currently playable classes in Diablo 4, all of which running the same quest available in Skosglen. A lot happened in a very short amount of time and was easily missable if you weren't paying attention. Luckily, we've gone back over the footage with a fine-tooth comb, so let's take a moment and look back and examine all of the locations, creatures, abilities, and even items from a mechanical and lore aspect. Starting with the Druid. As the quest opens up, we find the Druid inside the Khasra crypts, an undead repository in the hills of Skosglen. Immediately, scores of undead are seen wandering the halls, likely in response to Lilith's influence throughout Sanctuary. In the first few moments of combat, we're exposed to the Druid's staple ability of seamless shapeshifting, which allows them to use the transformation abilities so essential to the core of the Druid's being without having to focus on transforming into a werewolf or werebear first before activating any related abilities. Like Diablo 3, skills are broken down into resource generators and resource spenders, and the Druid demonstrates this by opening up many of the fights in the crypt by using Pulverize, a werebear-focused resource spender, and then building his spirit back up with Shred, a resource generator based in the werewolf form. And while it seems this is the particular Druid's primary form of attack, there are also 5 total basic attacks that can be utilized as generators, ranging from using were forms or storm and earth magic. After a quest update and a few more dead skellies, a legendary ring drops called the Writhing Band, which its flavor text reads, "The ring shifts and spins on your finger as the force within desperately attempts to escape." This ring gives a small percentage to summon a Hydra as a result of the wearer's attacks, and it's also a spell that's available to the sorceress. As the Druid gets nearer to the ends of the crypts, he shows off one last ability available in the ultimate category, Cataclysm, which calls tornadoes and lightning bolts to damage all enemies in a localized area, which is a great ability as the Druid can continue to focus on damaging enemies with his other skills while the spell is active, such as their shape-shifting abilities and even utilizing his Wolves, which is a companion spell that functions much like the Necromancer's command skeleton abilities in Diablo 3. After a few short cutscenes rendered in real-time graphics without having to switch over to full CG format, which is certainly refreshing after the trend set in Diablo games of mid-act or chapter cutscenes, we're introduced to a wealth of information about the area. First, the crypts were settled underneath a Zakarum church, made evident by the cross situated atop the nearby ruins of the graveyard the Druid crawls from. This same cross is seen in other trailers for Diablo 4, and most notably, in a screenshot from early development labeled as a Zakarum Cathedral. Afterwards, looking out across Skosglen, we can see 2 points of interest which serve the purpose that is said to be highlighted quite a bit in the open world setting of Diablo 4. The ruins on the right is Garenhold, the upper level dungeon that was playable in the demo, but is not covered in this video, though it should be noted that this dungeon is inhabited by the Fallen, who also return in Diablo 4. To the left is Korbark, a small hub town where you'll engage in various quests and, of course, merchants. The developers have even stated there are hundreds of these peppered across the available play area of the initial game. The various ruins that you come across in this area are said to be possibly a result of the events of Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction. But how? While it was widely believed that Baal only led his assault against the Ariat region on Sanctuary, it turns out that he had contingency forces in other parts of the world, much like Malthael did in Diablo 3. One of which was Skosglen, where his forces came up against the Druids, which called them into action against the Lord of Destruction, and is the reason we were able to play that class in that expansion. On the way to the quest update, the Druid comes across a Quill Rat, a familiar returning enemy from Diablo 2 and 3, and appears very similar as they do in other games, in small groups firing their quills from a safe range. Within the town of Korbark, we're given a demonstration on how quest updates work with the NPCs. Much like Diablo 3, we hail them and then are given a short voiced-over conversation and visible NPC interactions among themselves, and even with the player.
Down to the engravings. He's never seen it before. Everyone thinks my son's gone mad, but I know his visions mean something.
Let me go! Mother, please! I must go!
There he goes again.
Further up the path, we see another enemy type that players of Diablo 3 should recognize as the Charging Beasts, which have made short work of players on higher difficulties by rushing in from off-screen. Soon after, we see a major aspect of terrain traversal in climbing points, which adds a third dimension to the usual flat plane maps that we've been so accustomed to. Also returning in Diablo 4 are area events. The demonstration we're given is an event called Tolling Bells, which focuses on the Drowned, one of the many family groups that make up the bulk of enemy sets in Diablo 4. The Drowned are undead that have always been on Sanctuary, but largely as a ghost story, which focuses around superstition of sailors and fishermen. Their arrival is heralded by relentless tolling of bells, which we see in several points that are associated with their presence. However, during the Reign of Enmity, the current story arc of Diablo, they've returned in a major way and infest the shorelines of Sanctuary. The Tolling Bells event also showcases elite and unique enemies, complete with damaging affixes like Mortar, spraying fiery rain down upon the player. One final aspect evident in this area is the existence of social interaction with other players. While for the most part you won't see other players in the world, leaving you feeling alone, there will be points where the world becomes a shared environment with other players. Drowning caverns. What would a Diablo game be without sprawling dungeons? Well, in cases like Drowning Caverns, we don't see a large open cave or even catacomb, but rather a linear cavern system with larger rooms here and there. This isn't inherently a bad thing. The dealing with claustrophobia at lower levels makes handling waves of mobs like the Drowned much more uncomfortable. A feature to note that we see multiple times in the course of this dungeon is the use of the dodge feature, which became prevalent in the console variation of Diablo 3 and is integrated into Diablo 4 both for PC and console, whose UI is being developed with both platforms in mind for seamless transition from keyboard and mouse to controller play. As exploration progresses along, a Dol rune drops out of a random chest. The rune word system in Diablo 4 returns and takes a very different shape than it did in Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction. Whereas each rune held very immediate individual impact boons in Diablo 2, they now exist as a cause to effect format, with some runes just activating under certain conditions and others existing as the effect. Now, the Dol rune, for example, used to only offer a monster flee on hit effect on weapons, or a life replenishment on other pieces of gear, which is simple, right? But now it offers a 50% critical strike chance for 7 seconds when activated. A bit more complicated, but I'll let you decide how you feel about that. As a quest updates and the Druid drops down to the next level, we see an example of seamless exploration, which has been a design addition that allows the player to access another level of a dungeon without needing to enter a door and go through a loading screen just to access another map. At the end of the cave, we meet Marinth, the Drowned Witch. These large, bloated hags serve as the matriarchal figureheads of the Drowned family units. As we see earlier, the chieftains of the area made sacrifices to the Sea Witch in order to guarantee good crop and full nets, and likely prevent assault against fishermen boats by the Drowned. After an active battle with the Sea Witch, she drops the legendary Thunder Spire, a druid staff with a lore entry that talks about the ancient Vasily. The storm's rage is my own, brother. I call, and the skies roar in reply. Vasily to Bull Kathos. This is a really cool call out to yet another ancient who, up to this point, we hadn't got much information on, albeit the fact that Vasily, or Fiakla Gaia, is one of the more commonly referenced ancients, alongside Bulkathos, Esu, and Rathma. Return to Korbach. The quest culminates in a few updates in Korbach, and we take a moment to check out the various skills and talents associated with the Druid class. Now, recently there was a change to the way that the skill tree and talents would be configured, which was covered in my most recent video on the September quarterly update. So how that will affect the other classes aside from the sorceress, which was used as an example, is yet unknown. What we can take away for the moment is the return of certain abilities that the Druid held in D2, including Maul, which was an ability available in the werebear form and now shifts the Druid into a werebear and serves as a resource generator, and spells like Tornado or summoning pets like wolves, ravens, and vine creepers, which, unlike the mine creepers, don't never mind. One major change to the current build of the Druid is the lack of focus on fire elemental magics and summoned spells. The sorceress is already a specialist in most elemental magics, so it makes sense to go a slightly different route with which aspects the Druid spells end up representing. But the lack of focus on pet builds, well, is this something Blizzard may change at some point, or are they holding out for the pet class motif yet to be announced? Stay tuned. Aftermath. Another major point to call out is the return of the Khasra. The Goatmen once again make their appearance as a major scourge in the lands of Sanctuary. They're most prominently in Kandaras. Their appearance in Skosglen should actually come as no surprise, given the eastern continent is where they originated from, and where they spread throughout initially. And while they normally stay away from dangerous wilds of Skosglen, something or someone seems to have emboldened them, and released concept art might just give us a clue as to who it is. If we look closely at the released artworks of the Khasra and the Cult of Personality, the markings carved into the flesh on both of the groups are very similar, if not, in some places, exactly the same. It's safe to assume that the Khasra are back in answer to Lilith's return and the dark influence she exudes over the land. But now we've seen there is an even closer relation than that, as members of the Cult of Personality are believed to be followers of Lilith. Now that's it for the video. If you enjoyed, please consider hitting the like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and smash the notification bell like the drowned just appeared. If you want to see more lore videos and you wish to continue the discussion, check out all of our social media accounts, where you can also join the crusade directly on Discord. We have over 450 crusaders strong and have a Diablo 4 clan, which I may say is comprised of some of the best people I know that will help you through the game. But as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, Traveler.